November 8th, 1935. A funeral was held for a person that represented such high prestige and honor that the ruling party of this country, including their leader, couldn't bring themselves to not attend. This person was affiliated with works of philosophy, which was one of the divine sources of the whole spirit of the nation, indirectly shaping the future of the entire century and the ones following after. The name of the person was Elisabeth Forster Nietzsche, the sister of Friedrich Nietzsche. The country was the German Reich. Although scholars argue what was the motive of her incorrect interpretation of Nietzsche's work, stating that she wished to protect her deceased brother from the criticism of the totalitarian state and to make herself known as a caring sister that she wished to be. The fact that Rudolf Steiner, her tutor, whose job was to help her understand Nietzsche's new groundbreaking idea, stated that her thinking is void of even the least logical consistency, and that Nietzsche himself opposed the idea of anti-Semitism and might have hated the Nazis if he lived to see them, made Nietzsche's legacy completely different from what he worked towards. Her wrong interpretation of her brother's work may have indirectly resulted in the death of millions of people in one of the biggest conflicts this world has ever seen. Her actions, whatever the motive, were irrevocably and undisputably cruel. Hey, I'm Thomas. Cruelty is this very fluid concept that has the potential to be perceived in numerous different and abstract ways. Why do we perceive cruelty as one of the possible behaviors that individuals with power exhibit? Cruelty, being this abstract and complicated term, is not entirely expected to be spread throughout the animal kingdom, excluding us, is what we would think. Male chimps have been observed engaging in acts of bullying in order to prolong and strengthen their social status. Dolphins have exhibited a form of play while hunting prey, almost resembling a sense of unnecessary harm and distress to their victims. Even creatures that we perceive as being somewhat harmless and peaceful, such as meerkats, the dominant females would kill the offspring of subordinate females in order to stabilize and control the reproductive environment of the group. All of these actions invoke in our human minds a sense of cruelty, but we would skim over one of the words we ourselves use to define this phenomenon. You see, D-Day, the Normandy landings of 6th of June 1944. The result of this coordinated attack was the victory of Allied powers and the death of 20,000 soldiers. Were the men behind the organization and the logistics of these battles cruel? I mean, they could definitely figure out a way to at least minimize the potential loss of lives, right? After all, cruelty is the intentional infliction of suffering or the inaction towards another suffering when a clear remedy is readily available. They could also not do anything and not be cruel to their own people on the front and back home, and leaving the continent of Europe in the hands of a totalitarian state, which would count as inaction and therefore cruel. Action was necessary, therefore not cruel, if there wasn't unnecessary harm involved, which means we have made a term that is immeasurable, linguistically meaningless, morally relative. To quote an Associate Justice of the United States Supreme Court, Potter Stewart, "I know it when I see it," when asked about the measure he would use in determining what kind of material he would consider pornographic and what material not. Let's go back to the animals. The social hierarchy is an incredibly important issue that determines the whole trajectory of an individual's life. This isn't the case only for chimps. It's dogs, lions, hyenas, elephants. Hell, the naked mole rat native to East Africa, this thing has implemented social hierarchies in his behavior. They all bully and or threaten and or kill their way through the social ladder for the benefits that it might bring, like better reproductive opportunities or even prolonged life expectancy itself, because you're not waiting for any other bigger guy to come and devour you. Also, an interesting part that really reflects on how our societies have worked throughout the history is that some leaders of a chimp troop were observed to be smaller than the rest of the members. They could achieve this by not being a tyrannical types of a grunt, but by also being an individual that is not afraid to negotiate on equal and fair terms, and by maintaining meaningful social relations with both male and female members. They're not the leader only by being the biggest ooga booga, but also by being the smartest ooga booga, rendering the individual a true leader. Where does the separation from human and beast come in then? I mean, we also have ladders, steps, chains, networks, whatever social structures, and we know that there is bullying, whether it's verbal or physical. We also have the negotiation part, whether it is selfless or Machiavellian, where you're only trying to gain the most at others' expense, without any malicious action inflicting unnecessary harm or suffering. Wait, Machiavellian. Can animals be Machiavellian? Like Vlad the Impaler, but as a dolphin. I mean, surely, we can assume that some of the actions and behaviors we acknowledged earlier seem selfishly beneficial for the animal while being destructive for others. But all of these actions also conclude to the aim for the improvement of the individual or the whole group, not their personal pleasure. Dolphins cannot teach themselves other hunting tactics than from fiercely hunting prey. Meerkats cannot control the consequences of their reproductive tendencies than from murdering the offspring of the subordinate females. Fun is not their primary source of motivation in these actions. With them having no choice, their behavior is therefore not sadistic and not cruel. Now, let's play one of my favorite games. Try not to get your video completely blocked by playing the devil's advocate. Going back to our boy, Vlad the Impaler, a voivode of Wallachia. A semi-independent and important region of the 15th century Europe, most of its significance being derived from the fact that it bordered the Ottoman Empire while it was approaching the European kingdoms. In 1456, he invaded his cousin's land of Wallachia with the help of Hungary. He then began to strengthen his position by thinning out the ranks of nobility that opposed him. This will be a recurring theme with the cruel leaders. One notable group that opposed him were the Transylvanian Saxons. So, like a good ruthless ruler he is, he plundered the region, captured them, brought them to Wallachia and had them impaled, having done all of this by 1460. The Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II later sent out 2 of his envoys to inform Vlad that now with him being almighty and powerful voivode of Wallachia, he could pay his homage to the Sultan personally. He had both of the envoys impaled. This was obviously where the impaler is explained, having this brutal and cruel practice of hanging and impaling any man, woman or child that opposed him. Needless to say that he might have done this just for his personal enjoyment, since it does seem improbable that a child would oppose him. Long story short, wars broke out, Vlad had to beg the Hungarian king for help and got imprisoned instead. This is where most of the stories of his cruelty emerged. Some stories went out as far as to claim that he couldn't help himself and impaled the rats that would also inhabit his cell. Unfortunately, all information we had on Vlad were second and third hand accounts from other scribes and historians. But just the fact that there were people that found it important to point out his brutal tactic of breaking the spirit of his enemies by being this incredibly cruel puts things into perspective. Upon seeing the impaled victims, he has been observed noting what gracefulness they exhibit. Why did he enjoy being cruel? Or since his practices were so cruel, why were they also so successful at not being stopped? Let's not end with Vlad, a singular person with sadistic behavior. Let's look at the Holodomor from 1932 to 1933 in Soviet Ukraine, or Japanese Unit 731 throughout World War II. All of these inexplicably cruel, and all of these in some cases also justified by their perpetrators at the time. No single person. A person can be cruel and exhibit signs of psychopathy or sadism and even admit to it. But playing into our more tribal ways of existence, when perpetrators are in the numbers of tens, hundreds, or even thousands, where does the line get blurry? A dolphin has no need to justify its behavior. We can translate what we observe as cruel to be nothing more than a behavior caused by the evolutionary need to improve your current state by any means necessary. But do we have any other choice? We have diplomacy, international laws, human rights, and if war is necessary, we have rules to follow while conducting warfare, and war tribunals to settle injustice after. We can abstain from unnecessary harm or uncalled for distress. We can learn from the cruelty that the soldiers at the shores of Normandy endured, or we can learn from the unnecessary cruelty of the Yugoslav war. Why does the cruelty of the group, political party, military division, or even a nation exhibit itself to such an extent that it's being justified by them? In the last video I explained how the increase in Dunbar's number, the maximum amount of people a human can maintain a relationship with, helped the rise of cities and civilizations. This was achieved by inventing a tool used by us to this day. A story, meme, Now, memes can be funny, cringy, amazing, horrible, and they can also not be the funny hee images we find while browsing r/history memes. A meme is a virus of the mind, as Richard Dawkins put it. It is meant to transfer information easily, sometimes even behaving as a parasite, using its host as a mere transportation vessel that gives no actual benefit. Was Hermann Göring, Slobodan Milošević, Hideki Tojo, or Joseph Stalin all under the influence of a meme? It mattered not to them in what manner their ideas, thoughts, and orders were spread and acted out. It was all in the sense of will of the nation or necessary evil towards success. If we had the chance to ask them why they were this cruel, the answer would most probably be that they weren't. They didn't enjoy being cruel because, according to them, they weren't. At least not unjustifiably. To quote the devil himself, Hermann Göring, "The victor will always be the judge, the vanquished, the accused." It is only thanks to our perspective, our view on the moral value of sacrifice and the meme we are currently hosting, that we acknowledge cruelty as necessary in one case and unnecessary and unjust in other. Thanks for watching.